It's no secret that I have often publicly spoken about my distaste and distrust of the government-funded media in Canada. They don't report the news, they invent it. We, as taxpayers, are funding the mainstream media who then lie to us. The media lies with such ease and mastery and with targeted audience precision that is so compelling it's almost impossible to comprehend why they do it to us. What is the difference between the mainstream media and independent media? In my view, the mainstream media aims to project a narrative that invades our thoughts. Carefully crafted narratives are then transmitted from our minds to our conversations with family members, friends, and coworkers. The media is knowingly used as a virus to spread calculated ideas of the media's true masters. The media is no longer a voice for you. It has become a tool designed to manipulate under the disguise of informing our knowledge of the world around us. Independent media, on the other hand, is different. Never before has the creation of media content been so accessible to anyone with a smartphone. Pre-internet, I wouldn't have had the resources to record this video on my own or for you to view it. But why has alternative media become so popular? So popular that in Canada, the federal government is trying to completely subvert your ability to be the recipient of an alternative perspective on any issue through legislation like Bill C-11. C-11 is yet one more government trick worded to convince you that curtailing the content of the internet is another public safety law that will improve your life and make you safe. Recently, my friend and veteran Jeremy Mackenzie, yes, my friend Jeremy Mackenzie, the creator of the wildly popular and successful satirical podcast Raging Dissident, recorded a video about the media's hurt feelings and dismay that no one actually likes or trusts them. I posted the video on my Twitter account on August 13th, and it's been seen by 5,000 more views than I have followers on Twitter. It's been shared and liked hundreds of times. Gee, I wonder why it's so popular. In Jeremy's uniquely appealing style, he articulates many of the things his fans believe and can identify with. In the version of the video I posted, I stated that there is nothing here I disagree with. I stand by what Jeremy says here because it's the truth. The mainstream media needs to be called out for everything they've done to this country. The carnage they've caused is criminal. Attacking Jeremy for the truth is gross. I'm going to come back to this in a moment. There is a perverse and circular relationship with law enforcement and the media. During the convoy, a report was produced by a police officer about 42 publicly known volunteers of the convoy, myself included. In the report, after each person's profile, there was a reference to Annex A. 42 people were profiled by the report as some sort of evidence of disrepute. As it turns out, Annex A was a citation to mainstream media news reports done on each of us. The police officer conducted an investigation of 42 Canadian citizens solely by watching the mainstream media. This report was then turned over to the government as justification to criminalize people without due process and later freeze bank accounts. By extension, the media fabricated a narrative about Canadians who had a legal right to protest, and the police forwarded it to the government as evidence of criminality, which they gladly accepted and acted upon. This is but one example. In other words, police agencies have literally arrested Canadians based off of the evidence obtained by only unverifiable mainstream media stories. Let's come back to Jeremy Mackenzie, one of the creators of a fictitious country called Diagon. Spoiler alert, and this is where the Liberals should really pay attention. Diagon is not real. It doesn't exist, other than in the minds of those with a sense of humor and now as merchandise. It started as a joke and then spread as a meme on social media. Jeremy wanted to show how conspiracy-minded some of our politicians are and how desperate they are to create perceived threats to our safety, even when they do not exist. It was created when Jeremy wanted to hold a barbecue with others who were tired of being locked down and just wanted to have fun with other people in a social setting. To make it fun, he came up with two fictitious countries, one called Diagon and the other Circleon. So you know, Circleon is the arch enemy of Diagon, and the second in command of Diagon is a goat with drug abuse issues. Does that seem like a serious threat to anyone's safety? Why is this important? Because the Liberal government tried to label Diagon as some sort of domestic terrorist group as a partial justification to invoke the Emergency Act in February. The Liberal government, under Justin Trudeau, tried to justify attacking his own people because of a fictitious meme found on social media. Yet the mainstream media has continued to push this narrative forward as though Diagon is a real thing, instead of investigating the largest Canadian intelligence blunder in years. The mainstream media has perpetuated a lie on behalf of the government, who pays them $1 billion a year. Our so-called trusted media should have eviscerated the RCMP and the government over their blatant lies about this fictitious country called Diagon. But instead, they doubled down on their lies, simply because they wanted to give their viewers a narrative that there was a bad Canadian who didn't follow the dogma of the government or the mainstream media. For those of us who were in Ottawa watching the Liberal government justify the Emergency Act in a debate with the Conservatives, after it was invoked, we were shocked to see the number of Liberal MPs citing Diagon as justification to invoke the Emergencies Act. Law enforcement did nothing to correct this lie, and the mainstream media loved it. When it comes to media and law enforcement, it is often hard to tell if the dog is wagging its tail or if the tail is wagging the dog. The mainstream media's hypocrisy of late is so unscrupulous. The word hypocrisy doesn't even encapsulate their delusion adequately. There is a young global news reporter named Rachel Gilmore, who has been leading the charge as of late to defame Jeremy and other retired military members like James Topp, who has been walking across Canada since February as a protest of government overreach and charter violations. James has 5 overseas deployments and is a combat veteran of the Medak Pocket in Croatia, and served 2 tours in Afghanistan during a 28-year career in the infantry. For those of us who have served in the military, we often cope with unimaginable stress by having a good sense of humor, and we think Diagon is funny. Especially after seeing how grossly gullible the Liberal government MPs have shown themselves to be regarding a meme. I've always believed that the media wasn't to be trusted, and in my own personal experience, journalists are lazy with important details, like spelling a person's name correctly. But they're gifted in the ways of crafting a large message so effectively that it mimics hypnosis. Mass formation psychosis is when a large part of a society focuses its attention to a leader's series of events, and their attention focuses on one small point or issue. Mass formation psychosis can only be made possible through the mainstream media. Recently, a Toronto Star reporter sent me a private message asking me the following question. Are you concerned that Mr. Mackenzie's rhetoric is inciting people to harass reporters, and that by sharing his video and agreeing with his views, that you may also be inciting harassment? Here is an example of when it's okay for the media to incite harassment. Look at this example from a year ago from the Toronto Star, the very paper asking about inciting violence. Look at the comments in bold font. I have no empathy left for the willfully unvaccinated. Let them die. Unvaccinated patients do not deserve ICU beds. And another in plain text. I honestly don't care if they die from COVID. Not even a little bit. It is easy to vilify someone who has been rendered faceless by masking, especially if you have been programmed by the media to dehumanize others who disagree with the media. They helped many to mask their empathy towards fellow human beings. The metrics of societal degradation have been punctuated by astronomical suicide rates, job loss, and domestic violence. How would we know what to be afraid of if not for the mainstream media? Look at these comments on the front page and tell me who has been responsible for inciting hate, division, and discrimination. And that's just since August 2021. How about what the mainstream media has done to divide Canadians over the last 29 months? How was it possible for Canadians to have turned on each other at work, between friends, and within families? How was it that Justin Trudeau's rhetoric has pushed into the private lives of every Canadian home in this country, if not for the mainstream media? I believe that was Jeremy's point all along. The media has lost all credibility because they've set the conditions for the demoralization of Canadians for years. Perhaps we're just noticing it now from our experience of the last 29 months. In 1933, Adolf Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany. One of the first things he did was put a free radio in every German home. The radio was so new and interesting that it was eagerly adopted by every home in the country. It was the single most important tool Hitler had to transform the morals, ethics, and values of his people and to prepare them for what was to come. In his book Mein Kampf, Hitler wrote, "It is more difficult to undermine faith than knowledge. Love succumbs to change less than to respect. Hatred is more durable than aversion. And at all times, the driving force of the most important changes in the world have been found less than in scientific knowledge animating the masses, but rather in a fanaticism dominating them, in a hysteria which drove them forward." I recognize that any comparison of Hitler to today is a touchy subject. Many feel it's appropriate, many feel it's bad taste. But no matter what you believe, if we deny our past, we are doomed to repeat it. This is why cancel culture is so very dangerous to our growth and enlightenment as civilized people. This is how we continue to fall for the same tricks over and over. A simple Google search for convoy media retractions reveals dozens of links where the original stories reported by the mainstream media were outright lies, which then the government used to justify their targeting of its own citizens. Frequently, many alternative media stories have an element of clarification or examination of the lies being told by mainstream media. In my view, the mainstream media have been the biggest source of viral fear in the last 29 plus months. But they are now on their knees as viewership is an all-time low. Good. They've lied to us all along and should be held accountable for the conditions they have set to allow what has been done to us. At the very least, they should be made to compete on the open market for viewership. If they return to balanced journalism, the open market will reward them with subscriptions. Instead, they continue to hold themselves as the virtuous ones of truth, while demonizing those of us who see right past their dishonesty. Headlines viciously attacked the unvaccinated for months. It was a full court press against the very Canadians that chose to do their own medical research because inadequate medical information was being provided by the medical community. The basic standards of informed consent have never been met. Informed consent is a two-part formula. The medical community must provide a patient with information about the risks in exchange for our consent. They did not, and the mainstream media berated Canadians for not just blindly consenting. Informed consent is law in Western civilizations. It is not a nice idea. It's a law meant to protect the people, and any violation of informed consent is chargeable under the Criminal Code of Canada as criminal assault. Yet the mainstream media purposely created division, anger, fear, and targeted harassment of those who conducted this most elementary research of their right to decline a failed medical procedure that they also have a legal right to refuse. Unfortunately, I have to refer to Adolf Hitler again. The application of force alone, without support based on a spiritual concept, can never bring about the destruction of an idea or arrest the propagation of it, unless one is ready and able to ruthlessly exterminate the last upholders of that idea even to a man, and also wipe out any tradition which it may tend to leave behind. The last thought I want to leave you and the mainstream media with, because I know they'll be watching, is this. The reason mainstream media has the freedom to be so vile is because men like James Topp and Jeremy Mackenzie have literally put their lives on the line to see to it that the mainstream media has the right to free speech. And in turn, mainstream media uses it to defame them. Veterans can no longer be the tip of the spear, but they can still be a shield that stands between the people and their oppressors. On November 11th this year, how can we believe the mainstream media when they cover Remembrance Day at the National War Memorial and have to thank veterans like James Topp and Jeremy Mackenzie for their service? I believe the mainstream media owes them both a sincere thank you for their sacrifices and for their service.